Hello and welcome to ET Future of Money Summit. In the last few years, India, financial services and in finance, it has benefited tremendously from the opportunities brought about by the speed and scale of technological change in payments, in accessing credit, for instance, in SureTech. But all opportunities and with it choices are matched by risks. And in India's case, the opportunity and access is not equal for all. We have a big gap to fill when it comes to financial inclusion. So how do you promote and facilitate an environment that accelerates innovation across the financial sector? How do you ensure that it serves everyone and not just one half of the population? I'm Miloni Bhatt, and I have with me someone here today who can throw light on all of these questions. Rajesh Bansal is the CEO, Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, or the RBIH, as it is also called. Mr. Bansal was a member of the founding team of Aadhaar and specifically led the design of India's direct benefits transfer system, which is benefiting millions of Indians. He also played a key role in creating India Stack, a digital ID-based infrastructure for a presence-less and cashless service delivery platform in India. He's been a member of a number of committees of the Government of India and of the RBI. Mr. Bansal, welcome to ET Future of Money Summit.
Thank you so much, Miloni. It's my pleasure to be here.
And it's our pleasure to have you, sir. So if we can begin, can you start off by telling us what's the idea behind the Reserve Bank Innovation Hub and what are the key pillars of innovation that RBIH focuses on?
Okay, so, way back in August 2020, the governor announced that we want to set up a separate entity called the Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. And obviously, last year is when we started work. I joined in May last year. So coming back to the background, in your introduction, you mentioned, my introduction also, you mentioned India Stack. You're all aware that India has the pleasure of or has the opportunity of the world's best digital public goods. It has benefited hundreds of millions of people, but we feel that there is a lot more that needs to be done. And all the things that we hear about fintech is still touching 300 million is my take. What about the remaining 650 million? So that is the mission which we have been set up. I'll tell you what our mission is as I define it, in the last 1 year as CEO, is we want to ensure that suitable, sustainable, both from an environment as from an economically affordable point of view. Financial services are available to 1 billion people in a secure, frictionless manner. I know it's a mouthful, so I'll just repeat. Secure, sustainable, suitable products in a frictionless manner. Because even for you and me, Miloni, the financial service is not a frictionless world. I'm sure, your bank, your insurance company keeps on troubling you and me. My bank is currently troubling me for re-KYC. I tell them, can't you give me better options to do re-KYC instead of coming to the branch? But that's friction, right? So this is the issue we want to resolve as an independent company set up by RBI, and which is an independent board. So the governor, when he was, here in March inaugurating the RBIH, he was very clear that why set it up independently so that you have the freedom, so to say, to innovate with, hire the kind of staff, the specialization that you guys want to, which sometimes could be a constraint for RBI. So to clarify for the audience, what are the 3 pillars of innovation that we are working on? The first and foremost is process innovation. Whether example of KYC, or you look at my favorite example, and you should see some things coming up soon, is that the 120 million farmers in India, forget about you and me, we are still much better off. So one of the first things we did is my team went to the field and tried to understand what is the friction for a farmer. We realized that it takes on an average 3 to 4 weeks for a farmer to get a farm loan, a 1 lakh rupee loan, period. And then we brainstormed among ourselves and said, how can we reduce friction for that farmer and make it as easy as it is for you and me to instantly take a loan. I mean, you and I get too many offers all the time, right? But apart from those offers, we evaluated what are the integrations, automations that we need. And India Stack and other land digitization in states does offer us an opportunity where we can reduce our friction. So products have largely been supply side driven, whether in India or globally. I worked in 15 markets. It's all, bank driven. I'll give you a product, whether your flow is daily, economic flow is daily, or weekly, or monthly, I don't care. This is your EMI. What we want to do is, how do we work with the ecosystem, which includes fintechs, banks, technology companies, academia, and everyone, to as good as nudge them to think about the right mix of products that should be offered. In that, my favorite example is dairy farmer. So dairy farmer pours milk daily in a dairy cooperative. Now what happens post that? How many of the dairy farmers actually get a loan to increase the number of cattle he or she has? Very few frictionless loans are offered. So we are looking at, is there a possibility to reduce or to create a right financial product where the repayment can be done daily? Right? 10 years back, when there were no components of cashless, UPI, Aadhaar, it would have been a challenge. But today, the fact we have the best digital infrastructure, what is stopping us from actually developing a right product mix? I take a loan of $100,000 and I can repay on a daily basis. This is the milk that I've been pouring at the society for the last few years. And lastly, and the most important is policy innovation. So process innovation, product innovation, and then policy innovation. Policy innovation as an enabler for process and product innovation, as well as something which is more proactive innovation. So we will work with regulators, government bodies, and everyone to see what do we need in the policy space to enable, access frictionless finance, as I call it, in 2 words, to 1 billion people. I think I'll stop here. Happy to, talk more.
So, of these three things that you set out, process, product, and policy, from your vantage, what is hard? Everything is hard, but what is probably harder than the rest?
You're saying which of the three
Yes.
is the hardest?
Within the three.
That's a tricky one, Miloni. If you ask me from my vantage point, when I joined, obviously, and we thought all three are hard. If you ask me, process innovation is the hardest. When I'm working on this project on agri, it's so difficult for people, financial institutions, to change their processes. I'll give you an example. A lot of banks are now getting excited about the work we are doing. But a very simple example, there is something called e-sign, which allows you and me to digitally sign any document. Using Aadhaar OTP, it is valid under IT Act. Now the banks tell me and my team that, sir, but we will have to get the paper signed. Nah? We can always do e-sign and get done with it. So, and there are, I don't want to go into more details, but process. But maybe I'll give you another example. That when I was in Aadhaar, so we conceptualized electronic KYC, e-KYC, right? Which allows you and me to instantly open a bank account, get insurance, get a PAN card. I worked with the banking system. It took us so much of an effort to actually get the first bank to launch e-KYC in its true form. And when it was launched, the public, in Madhya Pradesh, where they launched it first time, they came and told the bank, sir, you have some magic or what? Don't ask me for anything. Just ask me an Aadhaar number and instantly I can open a bank account. That's why if you ask me, because in the financial system, there is risk, compliance, audit, regulation. So get through all that to actually make any process change. It is hard, but that's the fun of it, right? in the end, we feel that RBIH has contributed or Aadhaar has contributed.
Okay. So, can you go through some of the goals and priorities that you set out for RBIH?
Okay. Goals and priorities, maybe I would prefer to give in terms of the programmatic areas that we want to work in. And then I can come to some specifics. The programmatic areas, one of the big ones which I haven't spoken about other than AgriFin program is DEI, diversity, equity and inclusion. We did realize that, again, back to the best digital infrastructure and hundreds of millions of people, cohorts being left behind. And so we want to, I'm borrowing a term I think is used largely in the US, I'm not sure, nobody left behind. And you did allude to it in the beginning. Nobody left behind, irrespective of your income levels, literacy levels, region, whatever other social parameter, physically challenged, right? Senior citizens. Why should you be left behind in the financial service or even the youth? Just because, we have not developed enough, products, so to say, to be able to build that. So DEI platform will look at how do we bring everybody within the ambit of financial. I wouldn't want to define as financial inclusion, but seamless, frictionless finance available to everyone. We have launched the first major focus has been 365 low and middle income women in India, because the financial sector has largely not been able to deliver the appropriate financial solutions for women in India. So we recently did a Sonari tech sprint. Sonari, as you all understand, means self-reliant lady, where there were dual purposes. We wanted women to build for women, because our hypothesis is, my experience of about 3 decades and worked in this sector, is that nobody better than a woman to understand the financial needs of a woman. And it's largely fintechs are men driven, right? I think less than 10% fintechs are started by women. So dual objectives: to set a virtuous cycle of women building for women. And secondly, bring a more focused approach to building solutions for women. So we have identified a few startups, they are getting incubated at IIM Ahmedabad, CIACO. So that's the DI work. Then as I said, there is AgriFin work. It's a work related to emerging technologies. And on that, we're again trying to do what I call as a UPI moment in blockchain, that there's nobody at scale, no country at scale who has actually done implementation of blockchain at scale. So we decided that we want to enable building of an open interoperable blockchain platform in the country, which allows any bank to choose any technology or any fabric provider they want, instead of getting locked into one provider. I know I'm getting into a bit of technology. I will try and desist, but give a high-level overview of that project. So we have run a POC right now with 11 banks, where with 3 fabric providers, the DLT fabric providers, and developed interoperability layer. And the POC results will be going out soon to the participant. And we are already talking to the banking system to see how do we then take the learnings of this POC, the proof of concept, and actually enable building of a blockchain solution at scale with various use cases. So that's a third important thing that we are doing. I would say I will limit this discussion to these 3 big areas. There's a lot to chew with a small team, but that's where we are focusing right now.
All right. And, I'm curious to know a little bit more about the blockchain, system, which is going to be interoperable, you say, by banks, because interoperability has been a big problem with blockchains. And what are the kind of services what's the problem statement that you will solve over there with the, DLT network?
Yeah, that's a very good point because a lot of people have, I know there is a joke around in the industry that blockchain is a solution looking for a problem. So some very senior person asked me this thing 3 months back. I said, I don't know the answer. We'll get back to you after 3 months. It's actually a solution looking for a problem. That's what innovation is about, right? To try new things, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But so what we plan to do is, you know, maybe I'll give you more clarity that the banking system has already come together to set up a company. So this proof of concept actually did show and tell to the banking system. With their own hand, they could see how do you create a letter of credit. That is a use case we took. And about 70 participants were trained with 3 fabric providers. And they know, oh, so this is what a blockchain world would look like. This is the effort that I put in. We are also doing scalability testing because India, the volumes are high. You know, you can't look at volumes of Estonia and say, I will go ahead because Estonia, it works in Estonia. So we have looked at some of these, and the banks, especially the RBIH banks, are very keen, and we are talking to them. How do we actually implement use cases? First one, we are mutually looking at inland LC. We are potentially looking at, not sure as of now, we are discussing with banks whether we should do bank guarantee, syndicated loans, and various other use cases. So the banking system is evaluating with our help on what is the potential use case. But if I'll add, like when UPI was introduced, what did you and I think? It will only be used for payment to you and me. Look at how the industry has innovated. So my take is once the platform infrastructure is set up, there'll be too much with the financial sector can use it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, you mentioned that, the processes for you uh, uh, in this entire, the pillars, the idea behind the innovation hub and through the key pillars, the process has been the highest, has been perhaps the most challenging. But what I wanted to understand is, when you speak of blockchain, when you speak of distributed ledger technology, you're talking about banks coming together, and operating together. How are you building the trust, or what is the trust factor from the bank's side, and are you getting questions regarding that from the bank side?
So you're talking about mutual trust between banks?
Yeah, or trust in a completely new system, for instance.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I alluded to. Our purpose of running a proof of concept was that without spending money, work with us. The 3 fabric providers were nice enough. We have not paid any money to them to actually test it out. So they now have an enormous amount of trust. We did a survey, and most of the banks are no, I want to do it. So that's the kind of thing I would say we have helped, not just evangelize about an idea, which is an old idea, but actually been able to gain trust. That's a good point you brought in the blockchain, technology.
Yeah.
So their technology business, all of them are like, no, it works. So let's actually implement it.
So I wanted to talk about, the startup ecosystem. India, as we know, has the third largest startup ecosystem, just behind the US and China. We have some 50,000 odd startups, and I think 14 unicorns so far in the first half of 2022. Fintech is also, one of the fastest growing sectors. From your vantage, what are the challenges you see fintech facing? Right now the environment is really tough because there is high inflation. There is a recessionary outlook when it comes to economies like the European economies and even the US. And of course, there are challenges to our homegrown fintech. And how do you see RBIH to be an enabler for fintechs?
So I know it's, a lot of people call it in the last few months, especially the kind of funding drying up and various other issues, which I would say not really within our ambit, but how do we enable and ensure that startups succeed? First, we bring new ideas to the table. So I would say we enable thinking of solutions which startups have not even thought of. And we don't do it just on our own. I met maybe 100, 200, maybe startup founders. And when we talk about things and the fact that we are able to connect the dots, and then we tell them that, look, why have you thought of this? Have you thought of doing it this way? And they're like, oh no, why did I not think of it that way? So that's one. Secondly, we also unlock a lot of data in the ecosystem. For example, the state government, the central government have a lot of data which is there, out there. They are happy to use it for benefit of their citizens, but we have to develop the right frameworks to be able to use it while ensuring privacy protection. So I'm already talking to 3 state governments. How do we develop a framework? And talking to fintechs, how can you potentially use data for maybe a better insurance product, a better credit product, or even a better savings product? The state governments have a lot of data about citizens, including the DBT data. So how can we potentially use all of that? So unlock huge amounts of data to create new opportunities for fintechs. And maybe lastly, I would say also act as an interlocutor, sounding board for them when they are kind of at a dead end, not in funding again. We are not the guys who fund them, but in terms of where do we go from here? So me and my team actually sit with them, brainstorm with them, and then potentially look at this is the potential way forward. But lastly, I would do mention that I also work with the VC community. So I did give disclaimers about no funding. So what if we don't plan to fund as of now? I was on a call with the IVCA, the venture capital PE equity guys last week, and just 2 weeks prior to that, where we keep them updated on the key areas we are enabling. So because eventually, if your friend has an idea, after talking to us, that he or she will need some funding, right? So the IVCA is our other engagement, which helps, the industry keeping is updated on what are the frontier areas in which RBIH is willing to provide support.
So can you, lastly give us some of your thoughts on how do we accelerate India into a digital and a cashless economy? You've already worked on it and just would like to know, what are your thoughts on how do we push this momentum that we already have?
So one of the first things we have to do, and the governments are realizing right now, that there is something called digitization and, or rather something called computerization and something called digitization, which will enable data to be used, read through APIs, exchange, instant things are happening. So that, is happening. The central government and some states are already thinking about it. And as I told you, I'm talking to a few states that to make India digital India and frictionless, not just finance, any service to 1 billion people, we will have to use technology at a very different scale. Again, it will not help if the data or the citizen interface sits in a computer. So we will have to develop the right citizen interfaces to enable a truly digital India. Some steps have already been taken in that. In the case of finance, digital infrastructure that has been built is enabling that. Specifically on the cashless, I would say you might have seen the latest RBI vision document on payment systems, which has set targets on what are the key things that they will work on. And I would just like to add that obviously there are issues of access, including no device. So eventually, even if we have 600 million devices, for us to expect 950 million to go digital, it'll take a few years. And I work extensively in Kenya, where 80% people use digital payments using M-Pesa. So there is a long way to go because they could do USSD and a feature phone based. In India, smartphones are there, 600 million smartphones, but about 200 million people use UPI. The trust, so coming to the last thing, trust is what we need to work on. How do we build trust in digital interfaces? And specifically in our work, what I call as trust tech. How do we ensure we build trust in financial services so that it becomes seamless? And if there is a problem, like the Gen Z millennials are used to instant resolution at Amazon, Zomato, whatever, we in the financial services space will have to do that to ensure that the young generation, who is born digital, is native digital, will actually adopt all of this.
So hard work all around. It's been a very interesting conversation, Mr. Rajesh Bansal, CEO, Reserve Bank Innovation Hub. And it's the story of this bold new innovation strategy, the Innovation Hub. We wish you the very best, empowering, the objective of the Innovation Hub, which is to devise customer-centric, secure solutions for the ecosystem, innovations which are adaptable, and most importantly, as you point out, that benefit all. Thank you so very much for your time and for your thoughts today.
Thank you so much, Miloni, for having me over. Thank you. Bye-bye.